Okay, recording progress. Cool. So, Chatham House rule, basically the idea here is, well, it was before the recording was started, but after we stop the recording, we can have a free conversation without knowing who is affiliated with what organization. So the idea is to foster discussion, free discussion, without referring to any affiliations. Like I said, I want to go over the SAMM User Day highlights. We had quite some presentations, content-wise, very interesting presentations, I would say, especially mine. Nah, I'm kidding. I would say especially the news on the benchmark project, but let's go over each presentation in one slide. I'm not going to take too much of your time on this. I'm not going to relive the SAMM User Days with all of you. Well, basically, the first presentation was by Rob, and Rob is, to a certain extent, let's say, if we are part of the core team, aside from the core team, he's, let's say, the part of the family. And Rob has presented two things. First of all, he's talked about OpenCRE, and OpenCRE is really cool. And I'm going to show you a very quick presentation of the mapping. So the idea behind, or the goal of OpenCRE is to enable seamless mappings between different standards. I'm pretty sure that some of you, or maybe many of you, are dealing with different standards like the ISO, the SOC 2, SAMM, several NIST standards. And there's always the question, how do we map them to each other? And as you know, you might know this or not, it's on our website. We have, the SAMM core team has actually created a manual full mapping between the SAMM model and NIST SSDF standard. And that was an insane effort to do. So OpenCRE helps there, as they have kind of introduced mapping between all these standards. And if you go to their website and go to map analysis, I have no idea. Okay, now it works. So you can select here two standards that you would like to compare, and it will give you, and I'm going to pick, for instance, the ISO standard and let's say the NIST 853. And then it's going to just give you all the controls which are in the ISO standard and map them to the NIST standard controls. There is also sort of labeling or weights of the mapping links. How strong is the mapping? And direct would mean that these two controls are directly linked, while you can also check for mapping links with weaker relationships. Feel free to play with this. We have tried to check the mapping between SAMM and NIST SSDF, which we did manually. And we are probably going to work with OpenCRE and make sure that this mapping is exactly the same as the one that we did manually. Because the way this mapping works behind the screens, they're actually mapping each standard to the OpenCRE. They're mapping each standard to the OpenCRE model. So the OpenCRE is this hierarchy. And then these are the root entities in OpenCRE, and there is a hierarchy behind it. And then it's instead of making a mesh mapping, they're actually doing a sort of star mapping, I think it's called. So this looks very promising and very interesting. The other topic that Rob was talking about is actually how to do SAMM assessments. And by how, he mainly focused on the soft skills part rather than the actual content of the SAMM framework. And I'm not going to go over the whole presentation, but I would just put some of the tips and tricks that he's mentioned. He's talked a lot about the pros and cons of doing the assessment internally. So if you are doing an assessment for your own team and your own organization, versus, I would now ask kindly my core team member fellows to admit new participants to the call instead of me. So if you do the internal assessment yourself, you might be too positive or too negative, versus if someone external comes in, he's going to be very objective. On the other hand, if you are doing an internal assessment, you're probably going to be more familiar with the details and the specifics of your team, versus someone who's coming externally and who has a limited time to figure all that out. Additional, I would say, soft skill tips and tricks are to listen more, to paraphrase, and to ask follow-up questions. And instead of asking the questions in a more how it should be done way, so for instance, do you use checklists during threat modeling? You would rather ask the question in a slightly different way, where you ask during a SAMM assessment, describe your threat modeling process. And it is also probably a good idea to ask whether a specific activity even makes sense. So if you could ask, for instance, describe how you deal with suppliers and contractors. And if the answer you get is, well, we don't have anything specific really, the next question might be, do you need one? And how important is this topic for your risk appetite? So that sort of tips and tricks were discussed by Rob. And actually, because this is something that has been on our planning for quite some time, we will be putting this sort of blog or informational text on our website. There is much more. Like I said, there was almost, I think, 45-minute presentation. I'm not going to do that now. By the way, if there are any questions, you can always stop me and ask me, or we can talk about it later after after this is done, after I finish the recording. So the next presentation was about threat modeling and threat modeling with pasta. Actually, Tony UV has presented us with his threat modeling approach, which is, I would say, different from the Stride, the threat modeling that we all know. However, and it's actually, I would call it a bit broader, or very much broader compared to the typical Stride/Lindon approaches that many threat modelers are typically associating, or many people associate the term threat modeling with. And the idea was that his approach had many common activities with SAMM. I would say that what I took away from this interesting presentation was that threat modeling and OWASP SAMM are best friends forever. And I would also suggest that if an organization is doing threat modeling, then they're typically going to end up in a higher maturity level. And this is a hypothesis, but I would say that if you're doing threat modeling, you're going to end up with a higher score and with a higher maturity versus if you've never done it. So the third presentation was by myself. I have presented how SAMM is used at a Fortune 500 company, and because it was a fun presentation because I only got the approval to do this presentation a couple of days before that. Eventually, it was Zebra Technologies. I wasn't even allowed to mention their name in my title of the presentation. I'm also not allowed to share the presentation itself, while the contents of the other presentations you will probably find very soon on our website, on the owaspsam.org website. But I'm going to just highlight the main takeaways from my presentation. Zebra Technologies, it's a very large company, Fortune 500 company, who has different business units doing different things. Their core business is handhelds and printers and scanners and all those supermarket scanning devices at the checkout counters. This is typically all Zebra, or most of them is Zebra. And they have 14 business units, which are pretty much independent of each other. So they have quite some autonomy. And what they did is they introduced SAMM simultaneously for all business units for the entire organization. And it all works. It all works very nicely. They finally have objective measurements of the security posture of each business unit, and they can compare these business units to each other. So they do assessments per business unit, and this was something that was very interesting to know by the audience during the SAMM User Days. SAMM also provides the business units with clear improvement roadmaps of what do they need to focus first in terms of their security posture, and they typically do assessments every quarter, so their scores are likely to go up, hopefully, every quarter. And more importantly, their customers, so Zebra's customers, are asking, some of them, not all of them, are asking for BSIMM or SAMM scores, or whether they are using BSIMM or SAMM. And their conclusion regarding the SAMM model is that it's not perfect, and I guess we all know that, but it's the best model out there. If you have questions about this, I'm happy to answer them again after we stop the recording. Then Brian presented us with some benchmark progress and the work that they did together with Maxim, who is also on this call. So as you know, everyone using SAMM is very, very interested in having a benchmark that they can compare themselves to. And we had a survey running last year, and in the survey we asked how important is it for you or your organization to have a benchmark, and about 70% of the survey participants said 7 or higher on a 10 grade. So it's very important. And we are ready for your datasets, and we would love you to send us your datasets. Please send us your datasets. And the way to send us your datasets, you can find it on this link. Basically, what was modified is Brian and Maxim have added an additional sheet on the toolbox, on the official Excel toolbox. Unfortunately, it's only Excel now, but I know you all love Excels. So they added an additional sheet in this Excel toolbox. So if you have a SAMM assessment in an Excel sheet, you can just, I think there is also an instruction. I think you can just copy paste this Excel sheet or move it to another Excel file, and it's going to populate all the information in there. There are some additional meta parameters that we would also like to have. So the benchmark submission is completely anonymous, but we would also like to know additional things like, these are all things in the Excel, like the geographical location that your company is located, how many employees, how many developers, the development process, and some other questions. And of course, you are not obliged, so these are not required questions, you can also skip them. And the SAMMY tool is already exporting in this format as well. So if any of you is using the SAMMY tool, you can just click on export, and it's gonna give you the toolbox format in the new version. And we're planning to release the benchmark. We're gonna share this information as soon as we have sizable number of submissions. And I think some team members are mentioning the number 100. We might also go for around 99, or I think we'll basically have to make sure that the K anonymity from a privacy perspective is that we have K anonymity, so it's impossible to de-anonymize this data in any way. So during the SAMM User Days, we also had roundtables and a lot of discussions with the participants. As you can imagine, people had a lot of questions, but I'm not going to go over those. I will just tell you what we're planning to do next. We're going to release a survey soon asking you for some feedback. Everybody can contribute, and we will use the results of this survey to probably also prioritize internally what we're going to work on next. What we already have planned is something I've already mentioned, the assessments guidance, so the soft skills or tips and tricks how to do these assessments. We also have the benchmark report, which is planned for somewhere in 2024. But again, I guess this is dependent on how many data sets can we collect and how fast. But I'm pretty sure that we should be able to get there in the next 3 to 5 months. We will probably work on benchmark tool integrations. So it would be ideally you want to click on a button and all your results are sent to the benchmark project in an anonymized way, so you don't have to deal with the Excels. This is something that we will look into. And finally, we're also going to work further on integrating SAMM with other OWASP projects. It's always nice to have you guys tell us how can we help you increase your impact on security. So any suggestions and any feedback you might have, feel free to share, either in these community calls on Slack channel or in the survey that we're going to release soon. Now, the core team is going to get together we do get together every year. And these are 2 days, very intense working. So we are all stuck, but it's a nice way to get stuck because it's super interesting. So we're all getting together in a house where we clear our agenda. It's typically a weekend, no family, no friends, nothing. Well, friends, yes, because it's a core team, it's fun. And we're kind of friends in the core team. But we're going to then only work on SAMM. And typically this is when we make most of the progress. But not only, this is also the moment when we can all sync around issues which require some discussions. And this is going to happen in Belgium. Why is this important for you? People might be asking themselves, man, well, they didn't even invite me. Now they're saying they're going to have fun in Belgium. Well, this is important because we would like you to send us your ideas, your things that you might interest you, and basically all the things that we're gonna that you might share on the survey or in the Slack channel or on this call. Now, and this is now a call to action for you guys. So the next SAMM User Days is going to happen in Lisbon, and it's 26th of June, I think. But basically, it coincides with the OWASP Global AppSec Conference. So there's going to be OWASP Global AppSec Conference, which is amazing, by the way. I was there. We were there at DC last week. It's a huge event, not a small conference. And so SAMM User Days is going to be during one of these days. And I think the Global AppSec is 24th to 28th of June. Finally, I want to advertise again the self-paced SAMM training, which is becoming very popular. We've been receiving some good feedback on the course. So you can just get a crash course on SAMM. The course is completely free and the lessons are in small chunks. And there's also a quiz that can help you figure out how to do SAMM assessment in a more hands-on way. Okay, this is all I had to say, to brief. But you can stop the recording and then we can, I see somebody has a question in the chat.